Take a deep breath. I was a little nervous. All right, here we are. Well, first of all, thank you for being here.
Certainly. Happy to be here.
I'm going to be honest. I thought you were going to pull up with, security, police officers, a whole SWAT team.
They don't follow me around. I've only had them, and I didn't ask for them. They came out once when we had a bunch of protesters at the park, and they said they were going to come down and protest in front of my house. And so they parked along the street, and, of course, the protesters gathered at the park, all 8 or 9 of them, and then stood around with their signs, and then eventually they walked the block to my house, stood in front of my house, took pictures of themselves, and then walked back to the park. Well, that was uneventful.
So when need be, you can have security, like quick, if you need security.
Oh, yeah, I guess if I needed it, if I felt like I needed it, I don't,
That's a good thing then, right?
I'm not worried. I don't walk around looking over my shoulder or anything like that.
Nice.
Lubbock is a pretty, we disagree. People disagree in Lubbock, but people generally keep their emotions and stuff like that under control pretty good here, I think.
It's a pretty safe place considering, right?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm going to get started. I kind of just want to do this and know what your day-to-day life is like as mayor. First of all, what does the mayor do?
All right. Well, a mayor in our form of government is a city manager form of government, which means the day-to-day operations of the city are run by a city manager. So we hire a city manager. The mayor and the city council hire just 3 people. We hire the city manager, the city attorney, and the city secretary. Those are only 3 people we hire. The city manager hires everybody else. He is their boss. I guess technically the city council is the boss of everybody, but they answer to him. We don't go directly to any department or department head or employee and tell them to do something or criticize them for doing something. We go through our city manager and express our concerns about something, and then he generally will go to them and then report back to us. It's a proper chain of command. We set, as city council, we set the broad policies for the city, our priorities, and we set the budget. That's our biggest job that we do, is set the budget, and which means we fund each department at the level that we believe that department warrants being supported. Main ones being, of course, police and fire, take up more than half of your budget. So the mayor's main job is to sit as the presiding officer of the council. So I run the city council meetings. I approve the agenda that's going to be put before us. And I'm, of course, the titular figurehead of the city, so I sign all contracts and documents. I'm the person who's authorized to do all of that. When people have events, things like that, and they want someone for the city to come, that's part of the job of being a mayor, is show up and support, the different organizations and people in our city that are making our city work, because it's not all about city employees. It's not all about government. It's about private organizations. It's about individuals. It's about churches. It's about, civic clubs, all that kind of
stuff.
Texas Tech, LCU, those all things make this city work. And so, my job is to be a public face for the city. I've spent a lot of time since the legislature's in session this year. I've gone down to Austin quite a number of times to speak to our legislators in different committees about bills that are important to us. And so, they will listen. They want to hear from the mayor. If you go down there and you're the mayor of a city with 275,000 people, they generally will give you a hearing. And so that's a large part of it. Day to day, I'm in the office quite a bit every day. I'll get a stack of that high, stuff to sign that I got to sign. And the city manager and I meet together. We met this morning. We meet every Monday morning to kind of go through things of concern for him and for me. We go back and forth on that. And then I'm just always looking for opportunities, to move our city forward and talk to people who maybe in the private sector can do things for Lubbock that are very positive, and then say, how can we work with you to make that happen? So, I'm sort of the cheerleader for the city and the biggest promoter it's got, which is easy for me because I've lived in the city since I was a 4-year-old, and I love it.
So what is like for you on the top of the agenda pretty much every day or every week? Like what do you want to see done here in Lubbock?
I guess, week to week, I just want to make sure, first of all, I get a lot of emails and phone calls. People reach out and complain about stuff,
Do you have to legally
potholes.
answer that?
I guess not. I guess I could ignore them, but I won't be mayor for long if I ignore them,
Yeah.
So you get a lot of emails about, trash wasn't picked up or there's a pothole on my street or they didn't like how the police treated them during a stop or, just all kinds of stuff. And so usually what I will do on that, I will refer that email. I will respond to the person. So I want to refer this to whatever department, is the appropriate department. And one of the neat things I find as mayor is if I forward that email from someone onto the appropriate department, amazingly, magically, it gets addressed pretty quickly. So I tell people, I said, probably the best way to contact me is with an email because it's easy for me to pass that email and your concerns on to the appropriate department and get a result for you, to the extent that it's possible for us to do that. Sometimes people want me to do stuff. They complain about something that happened on the tech campus. And I go, I got no jurisdiction there. We got no jurisdiction there. So nothing I can do for you there. Or something that happens out in the county. I can't control that. But if it's something within the city that's under the purview of the government and I think it's a legitimate concern, well, I'll pass it on and try to get a result for the people. And so that's what happens day to day. Overall, I just want to make sure that our city is meeting the expectations and the needs of our citizens in the most efficient and effective way possible at the lowest cost to them. That's my overriding concern.
So basically, if my little brother Thomas owes me $50, I email you, you send it off, and I get my $50 from him, right?
Yeah, well, see, that's one of those things that's not within my jurisdiction, so in my purview. So, you got a pothole in your street. Well, yes, that. But individual. It's interesting what people will are concerned about and what they will write to you about, and some people, you'll hear from again and again and again about one particular issue that's very, very important to them. We have a woman who calls frequently because we're in the process of trying to eradicate the prairie dogs who are just totally destroying our parks. And our parks are for people; they're not for prairie dogs. And they've just destroyed Buddy Holly Park, and we're trying to bring it back. And we have people that don't want us to do that. And one woman who just calls constantly, everybody constantly. Don't touch those prairie dogs. They're cute little things. I go, well, yeah, they're cute, but they're ruining our city parks, and our city parks are a big investment, a big asset of the city, and it's for our people to enjoy. And you can't enjoy them if kids can't be running around the park, and the danger of them stepping in a hole and breaking a leg, which has happened, and so.
If somebody breaks their leg, do they try to sue the city?
You can't. You can't.
Oh, no.
The law protects the city when you're using a park for recreational purposes.
There you go.
We're pretty.
Also, you don't have
unless
any,
there's gross negligence. That's I think about your only way. We would have to know about it and just totally ignore it, and
So anything that goes on at Tech, you have no power over that.
No.
Who handles that? Do you know?
That's Tech is a state institution,
Oh, okay.
and so it's. All the property that Tech sits on is state property, and state rules, state laws apply to it. And so the city really has, we work with Tech as much as possible, but Tech is its own, sovereign entity, so to speak, within our city. Yeah.
It's a city within a city.
Yeah, it is. In many ways, it has its own police force, and so they maintain their own roads. We supply utilities to them, which they have to have from us, so we have a relationship with them in that way. But everything else they take care of. So
this is why I kind of wanted to do this podcast as well, because I don't think people understand what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
And because I had asked what did they want to talk about. I don't really want to get specifics, but let's say construction on 19th. Mm-hmm. That's not in your power to do anything about it, or is it?
Well, my only power on that is to complain like everybody else does, because again. That's a state project. People don't realize that 19th Street is actually a state highway.
Okay.
And it runs through the city. We call it 19th Street, but it's really a state highway. And so any work that's done on it, any repair to it, or in this case, it's not repair, it's a total rebuild of the highway, is done by the state. And so they let the contracts, they supervise the contractors. We've met with them. We have tried to do everything in our power to get them to move things along, and they have. The pace has picked up, and I think people can see that now happening on 19th Street. I think their goal is to be finished with it by the end of this year, and I've heard nothing to say that that's not going to happen. Once it's done, though, interestingly enough, the state is going to turn 19th Street over to Lubbock.
Oh, nice.
And it will no longer be a state highway. It will be the city street, 19th Street, and it will become our responsibility from there then on to maintain it. But the nice thing is they're giving us a brand new rebuilt street.
That's sweet.
So maintenance will not be an issue on it for quite some time, normal maintenance, but we'll have a beautiful street. The same way with Avenue Q. That project was the state's as well. So,
do you think the state operates slower than the city? Okay.
I can't talk about it.
Sure.
I don't want to badmouth anybody, because we rely on them. But, they've got their own challenges and they've got their own process.
It's a big state.
It's a big state. And, we're just happy that the money's there to do the project. And, of course, the state's also building Loop 88,
Nice.
and which is huge and it'll be wonderful. I don't want to badmouth TxDOT at all.
It's been moving smoothly.
They're building this highway for us, this loop, this
Right,
new
we'll edit
loop,
that
outer
part out.
loop. So, we're pleased and happy with them. And, their processes are different than us and slower than ours, I think, lots of times. But we're happy.
There's just a lot of moving figures into managing a city.
Well, there are. And just, people say, well, if you decide to do something, then you just do it. But they don't realize on projects like, these loops and a lot of things that we do, we've got road bonds. We're building new roads. And so we've passed 2 almost back-to-back road bond issues for about $300 million in road bonds and building these. But it's a 5-year project, and you have to buy the right-of-way, to expand your highway or to build it. You have to do the engineering and the planning and the drawings of it. And all those things have to take place before you turn the first little spade of dirt. And, so a lot of stuff goes into any project that you do. And sometimes the city and the state run at a different, time frame than a private individual can. You can move things forward just through the force of your own determination to do it. But states and cities have processes and procedures we got to go through, and we just really can't.
Are those procedures necessary? And
some of them probably could be streamlined. Okay. One thing we run into, for instance, we're in the process of building. We're going to be building. I guess that's the right word. Creating Lake 7, which is going to be a huge project. We can talk about that in a little bit. But it's a canyon right at the moment with just a stream that runs through it that we will then build a dam and back up, and it'll be a huge lake, a supply of water for the city and a recreational gem and jewel for the city. But we started getting the permit from the state to do this back in 2006. And we only got our permit from TCEQ to move forward just a couple of years ago. That shows you how long it takes. And now we've got to go through now that we're past the state, we've got the state's approval, we've got to go to the federal government and the Corps of Engineers to get their approval. And that can generally be a very long process as well. We're hoping that can be shortened. And one of the reasons I think that Trump can be very helpful as president is he wants to remove a lot of those unnecessary roadblocks to moving projects forward. He's a builder. He understands.
He knows it.
That rules and regulations, while many of them are necessary, sometimes they're really created in a much more burdensome manner than they need to be, or really not that necessary. And so we're hoping to get a lot of that maybe taken out of the way and moving forward.
Sort of like a Doge, but on a local level.
Yep.
I got you. Oh, I forgot. I should have started earlier and asked this. How does the city generate money? Where does that come from?
Okay. Money from the city comes 2 big pots of money. One is your property tax, okay? And that's what most people pay most attention to because, you have to pay that. You either pay it, monthly with your house payment, your mortgage payment, or, if you own your house outright, you have to still write that check every year
right?
for property tax. You're never free of it. It's always there. It's always a burden on your property. To me, it's the most onerous tax a government can lay on people, and that's why I'm very, very cautious about that and very reluctant to ever raise that burden, because I know how tough it is on people. Because if your house value goes up and we don't do anything, then your taxes are going to go up. And let's say, in a given year, you have the same job and it doesn't pay you anymore. And everything else has gone up, and your house payment goes up because the property taxes go up. That hits you really hard. This is a terrible thing to say, but I've never minded income taxes as much as I mind property taxes, because at least you only get taxed when you're making money. Yeah. If you're not making money, you don't pay an income tax. But property tax, you pay even if you lose your job. As long as you got your house, you're paying the tax. So it's a very onerous burden. It's necessary, but that's one of the biggest ones. The other big one, and they're about equal, not quite equal, is sales tax. So, whenever you buy anything, there's always an 8.25% tax. If something costs $10, it costs you $10.88. And so that tax, most of it, 6.25%, goes to the state. All right. The rest of it goes to the city. And so we get that sales tax. And so that's the other big part of our budget. So when times are good and people are out there spending money, that money comes in to the city. When you go through a tough time and recession, that money doesn't come in as much. And so our budget is really relies a whole lot on how good the economy is for people. Now, the other source of income to the city are what we call franchise fees. We own the streets and the alleys, and when someone wants to come in and lay a fiber line down or a gas line down or something like that through our right-of-way along our alleys or utility lines or along our streets, to have the right to do that, they pay us a fee. That's a franchise fee, and that's another fairly big bucket of money. And there are fees for other things. If you rent a facility, they're not that much. These little smaller buckets of money that you get, but those are mostly where the income for a city comes from.
So it sounds like to me we need to bring more people to Lubbock. This means more money, right?
Well, okay. Here is the cost of bringing more people to Lubbock: is as your city grows, you of course, and this is why we had 2 back-to-back road bonds. You have to build roads.
Oh, there you go.
People come and they move out into they live in new areas. So as we expand out to the south, usually is where we've been going. I think we've about gone as far south as we can. We need to start moving to the west and the north, which is what I hope to see. But as you do that, we have to build roads. The developers build the streets, like your street right outside your house here. The developer who develops this area builds that street, but the main thoroughfares, the University Avenues, the Quakers and all that, that's the city's responsibility. We build those. And so we use bond money to build those because they're very expensive projects, very expensive projects. So, that's, but as you grow, you not only have to build streets, but we're actually adding another, in fact, I think we're having the grand opening for it in a week or so, our new fire station out in South Lubbock. You have to have fire stations because you're required to have a fire station within a certain number of minutes from any residence or building in your city. If you don't do that, then your city gets a bad rating, and when your city gets a bad rating, your insurance rates go up because the insurance company, part of that rating is you live in a city where the fire department can be there
City
quickly.
has to pay insurance?
No, you do.
Oh, we do.
But your insurance rate is based on the city's rating.
Got you.
And so we are a class 1 city.
Nice.
And so that's one thing we do, among many things, really well. And so we're a tier 1 city for that. And of course, again, your police have to be able to respond. We built several substations in different parts of the town to hopefully make our police presence stronger and our response rate quicker on that. So growth has its own issues, but yes, it brings in people, it brings in property taxes, it brings in sales tax, but it's not without a corresponding cost. It's not just a wash. Overall, it should be better for the city in general, and it is.
So I've heard a lot, I asked because I told people you were coming on, a lot of complaints.
Mm-hmm.
What are the good things that Lubbock does? You already just mentioned one. What'd you say, rated number one? So what are other good things about Lubbock? Can we at least talk about positive things?
Lubbock has a very low cost of living.
Nice.
Compared to other cities. And so I think that's a real positive for Lubbock. We have one of the strengths of Lubbock is our educational institutions, Tech, LCU, Wayland, South Plains College here. So we can provide an educated workforce to people who want to bring businesses here. Another thing I think is good about Lubbock is we're dang friendly people. And has nothing to do with me, but my job is to help sell those qualities of Lubbock to other people. Because one thing I would really like to do is bring in more businesses from outside into Lubbock, because when a business comes in, they're paying property tax at a different level and a different rate, than a residence is. And to the extent that they bring in, they build a huge, $500 million facility, or like Leprino, $1 billion facility, now we've given them some tax abatements for a while, but eventually when that kicks in, they'll be paying a big chunk of property tax, which helps offset the burden on residential property owners, which is quite burdensome. You've got a business and your business is related to your property, and you're paying it because that's your business. A homeowner is in a really different situation. So one of my goals is to bring in more outside businesses to Lubbock that bring in good paying jobs and will also help expand our property tax base at the manufacturer or business level, rather than that takes some of the burden off of the residential property tax burden.
So like when you're bringing in businesses, how do y'all decide what side of town the business is going to be on?
Well, a lot of times the business will decide that. Depending on what they need, if they need heavy utilities and heavy water and all that, it has to be located someplace where we can provide that to them pretty easily. Yeah. Because they're not going to want to pay, if our sewer lines and water lines stop a mile away from their property, that's an expense. So they want to locate someplace close to where we already have built out utilities. We have a thing here in Lubbock called the Lubbock Economic Development Association. It owns a lot of property in good locations, and so a lot of times that's the first place businesses will look, because they have picked properties. It's sort of a quasi arm of the city. It's paid for a little bit out of sales tax, but it works to try to bring in outside economic business to Lubbock. It was very influential in bringing in Leprino and a bunch of other businesses. So they own a lot of property they may need something near rail lines, and so there's only so many places in Lubbock that are close to a rail line. One of our problems in Lubbock is our rail lines kind of run out there also close to our airport. So if someone wants to build a building that's very tall, we have a problem because they can't, because it's in the path of the airport. So we're trying to buy property outside that path, close to to rail lines and all that. So that gives businesses a good place to locate. But it's largely where they think they may want to be close to a highway. It may depend on how much property they need. That's largely their decision. We'll help them find different locations that might work for them, but at the end of the day, they're the ones deciding it.
Can you explain to me why we didn't get a Buc-ee's?
Because we don't have a real interstate running through Lubbock. Buc-ee's only locate on interstates. And so one will never come to Lubbock until I-27 becomes a major. And let me just tell you, we're working on that project, but it's a long-range project to get I-27 extended from Laredo, Texas, all the way up to Canada, through Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, to Canada. And so, in fact, I was in Washington a month and a half ago or so, talking with our senators, congressmen up there on that project. And it's moving forward. And slowly, again, we've been working on it for 25 years. It may be another 15, 20 years before it all happens. But I think the time is really good for us. Again, I point back to Trump. He's a builder. He understands the importance of infrastructure. We're hopeful that he will pay some real attention to this project. A, because it runs through the center of the country, through the heartland,
that'd be a nice
of this
bike ride.
country. Yeah. And so if that happens, or even if it gets extended quite a bit, and the traffic moving along it is much greater, then you get a Buc-ee's. But they will not put a Buc-ee's where there is not an interstate. You find me one.
Fair enough. Have you been to the one in Amarillo?
Oh, yes, they're incredible. They're incredible. Yeah, I know why people want a Buc-ee's. I want a Buc-ee's, but Buc-ee's has their own criteria, and interstate is one of them.
You still haven't been, have you?
Nah, I've never been.
Yeah, you just get lost in them. And
how long are you mayor for? How many years?
2 years.
And you can run as many terms, or is there?
Yeah, as many as the people want me, and I feel like I'm up to it, and God lets me. So,
do you plan on rerunning?
Oh yeah. I wasn't in this for a one-term.
So
deal.
you might be able to see some of these projects.
I would love to see some of these projects. I mean, that's kind of one of my deals. I want to keep my foot on the accelerator. I want someone there who does keep their foot on the accelerator. At the same time, I ran for mayor because I'm very concerned about the burden of property taxes, and so I want to try to balance those things very much. I ran on three things: public safety, keeping taxes low, and protecting neighborhoods. Those are my three things. Those are still my three things that are important to me.
How do we develop sort of a more respectful, better relationship with the police? I feel like they get a bad rep. I don't really. There's the little boys over there. Mm-hmm. It's a safe neighborhood. They like to play and stuff.
It's great.
I feel like online, you hear all this, but and people have an idea of police, and how do we as a community support our police officers? Think they're important.
You won't have a good community at all without a good police force. My goal is to have the best trained, equipped, professional police force in the state of Texas. We hired a new police chief right after I became mayor. Seth Hyman is our new police chief. Stole him from Midland, and he's a great guy, and he's working really hard. The main job of a police force is to control crime in your city, and everybody knows of all the positive things about Lubbock. It does have a crime problem, and a lot of that is related to drug and gang-related violence, and so his job is, you'll never eliminate it, but to get control of it and to bring those statistics down so people feel safer in their city. And I think he's doing a good job. He's a great chief. It's important to have a police force with really good morale that really want to live up to their calling and their oath. And a lot of that comes from good leaders, and they inspire that in them, and hold them to account for that. And he's the kind of guy who does that. And I've even seen it, in just the attitude of our police force. So I think he's doing a great job.
So it starts at the top with him.
Starts at the top. Lubbock is generally a supportive community for our police officers. Police are people just like anybody else.
It's a tough job.
It's a very tough job, and a thankless job lots of times. And they, quite honestly, have to work with some of the worst aspects of humanity. And so, I'm willing to give them a little bit of grace. At the same time, I do hold them to a high standard, and I think they want to hold themselves to a high standard. But leadership is important. If they feel good about the job they're doing, they feel like they've got the support, I think they'll be great. They'll do the job really well. So Lubbock is supportive of them. I'm supportive of them. They supported me. The police association did when I ran for mayor, because I am very much committed to their welfare.
What's your relationship like with him? How often do y'all talk?
Well, I'll probably email him at least once a week. I'll pass an email on to him when I get one, and he'll respond to me. I sit down with him every couple of months or something just to see what's going on. Or if I have a concern, I can always pick up the phone and call him. I mean, the proper procedure is generally to go to your city manager and then go to, if I want to talk to him specifically about something I'd like to see happen, but just to have a regular conversation with him, see what's going on. He's there. He will answer the call anytime I call.
Does that make your job difficult going through all these channels to get things, or is that absolutely necessary?
I'd love to just be able to do what I want.
We shouldn't give somebody too much power, right? I guess, right?
Yeah. I'd love to just everything I wanted to happen, see it happen, just snap my fingers, see it happen. It doesn't happen that way. One vote on a city council. I have 6 other members, council people.
And you were a District 3 city council member, weren't you?
I was. I served 2 years of the 4-year term there, and then when our mayor at the time, Trey Payne, decided he wasn't going to run again, I decided I'd run. I felt, you could call it a calling. I just felt like the public needed a choice. I knew that one of the other city council members who'd been on the council for 8 years was going to run, and he and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. He's a good guy, but we just had different priorities, and so I just said, okay, do I just sit back? And I knew he'd have a lot of support, a lot of money. He had name recognition. I didn't have that. Was it something I was willing to do? I could easily have said no, and I decided, I want the public to have a choice. I want them to actually have a real choice in this election. And they had a choice of 5 people, actually 6, I think. But the 6th guy was a college student doing it as a lark, I think. He never showed up for anything. And but anyway, but it was a real contest between 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sanders, Hernandez, you.
And
I can't think of the other guy.
Tony Renteria.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was a real contest. And it went to a runoff.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I felt like people really, really did have a choice.
I will say that's a positive. Another one for Lubbock, the voting, like registering to vote, going to vote. It's a very smooth process.
It is.
And I thought it would be intimidating, a little scary. And this was my first time voting. Smooth.
No, it's
very
easy.
simple.
Easy as easy peasy to vote in Lubbock. And
even the presidential one.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed that more people don't vote in a city election.
So how do we change this?
Yeah.
Well, I look at it one of 2 ways. I said either the people are just really happy with the way things are going, and they say, I don't need to vote. Things are going great. I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Or they have a very cynical attitude towards the government. It doesn't make any difference. It's going to be the same old, same old.
I've heard
so part of that was why I ran, because I didn't like it where it was kind of like assumed this person would be the next mayor or whatever, because that was what certain people wanted. And I just didn't like that. You needed somebody who was in the race for one reason and one reason only, and that was to represent the people of Lubbock, the citizens and the taxpayers, not anybody else. I have no ambitions of being anything other than mayor, running for any other office. I'm retiring from my law practice, so it's not like I was looking at it as an opportunity to bring in new clients and lots of business. That wasn't it at all. I didn't have any big groups of people with lots of money supporting me. It was, hundreds of people at small levels. So, that was why I ran. And if I run again, that's why I'll still run. Not when I run again.
There you go. Do you get a salary?
Yeah.
Can we know how much? That was one of the questions.
$75 a month.
There you go. That's nothing.
Yeah, people seem to think that we make lots of money being mayor. I've seen that. When you were running, people go, the mayor's, lining his pockets with all of this, and he's got the money to, I'm not a rich guy. I mean, I am by a lot of people's standards, but I'm not. I live in a house in.
You have a nice truck.
Thank you. Yes, I like my truck, and I've been a lawyer for 23 years, and I'm comfortable, but I'm not one of those people who has a lot of money to throw around, and so I'm happy to be mayor.
So you
know why I'm
thoroughly enjoy the job.
I do. I look forward to going in and doing stuff. I want to leave a mark on Lubbock, not my mark. I want a mark that truly benefits the citizens and the taxpayers of Lubbock. There are opportunities out there I think Lubbock is the premier city of West Texas, and it should look that way and be that way. And so I'm willing to do almost anything I can to move that process forward, like I said, while still being conscious of not putting a bigger burden. Figuring out ways to do that, make that happen without putting a bigger burden on people for taxes. Because, nothing worse. I've seen these cities where people have these grand ideas and we'll just tax people a lot more money to do this. Well, that's not the answer. You got to get people, private groups, private individuals, other organizations, foundations, and all that, to buy into a process and to some project, and to make it happen for it to be successful.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do we look out for the little guy, the people who don't feel represented or they're being trampled on? But I guess this is one great way, the taxes, the burden of taxes.
That's the ways I look out for the little guy are my three things I ran on. Public safety. That's as important to the little guy as it is the big guy. Yeah. In fact, it may be more important because sometimes the little guy can't live in the nice gated community or anything like that. Can't have his own private security, so he lives in areas where he depends a lot on the police presence and all that to control crime, and that's important to that person. Low taxes, not putting that extra burden on. And I always said, my son and his wife, when I ran for mayor, they were both teachers. So they're living on a teacher's salaries. They're raising my two granddaughters, and the cost of groceries had gone up. Their insurance payments on their house had gone up. Everything was going up. And I said, those are the people I think of when I think about setting a tax rate. I'll go back to this for a minute. Talking about property taxes. Most people probably got their house appraisals recently. And maybe your appraisal went up, maybe it didn't. Mine did, but I'm over 65, so I don't ever pay more taxes. When I turn 65, whatever I was paying at that point, that's what I pay now. So, but my son and his wife, it'll always go up until they turn 65. So they look at that every year, and that becomes an increasing burden. And if you don't get a raise during that year, but everything else has gone up, it's hard for me to say, well, just eat that bullet too, take that shot, because we've got to have it. Well, do we really got to have it? I'm just very concerned about that. So I'm always looking for other ways to bring in money, sales tax money. If you can do things that bring in visitors to town, bring in new businesses to town, and you can get more sales tax money, that's what I want. Or you bring in a new business that'll pay property taxes, that's what I want.
Are we going to get an aquarium?
No.
Okay, somebody asked that.
No. See, okay, here's how I look at stuff. I mean, there are a lot of things people say. Zoo, I can get a zoo. When are we going to get a zoo? When are we going to get an aquarium? Why don't we have swimming pools? Did you have that one? Was that on there?
That was on there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, why do we not have swimming pools? Those are all wonderful things to have that come at a cost. They don't pay for themselves. They never pay for themselves. So the general public is paying for things like zoos, aquariums, swimming pools. When I grew up, we went to the swimming pool at Clapp almost every day. That's where we lived at the summer. And I understand that. But what people don't understand is, the city didn't take good care of the pools we had. So they fell into really bad repair. And we were looking at an incredibly expensive, bill to get them back up. And we couldn't even guarantee if we spent that money that they would be functional. But beyond that, what people don't realize, that people who are nostalgic like me don't realize, that the situation at pools now isn't the same as it was when I was a kid. We have a hard time keeping lifeguards at pools because, this may sound bad, but the kids who are swimming there, they don't respect the lifeguards. They don't listen to them. They get in fights. They're having sex in the pool.
Whoa.
They're doing all kinds of stuff, and pools aren't what they were when I was a kid. And so we had a hard time getting lifeguards. People just didn't want to do the job, and you can't have a pool open without a lifeguard. The other thing about pools are they're only open a couple of months of the year.
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking at money to be spent for what I call quality of life issues, I'm saying, where can I put that money that is useful for more people more often? And to me, it's the parks. And so I'm committed to trying to develop our parks, because anybody can use the parks. There's no cost to use the parks. The parks are open all year round. So I don't see the pools coming back unless we get in a public-private partnership with someone who wants to put up some big money.
That's a great way to do
because a good pool for Lubbock, and again, Lubbock is a huge city. Where are you going to put a pool?
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, well, he's not a swimmer, but where do you put a pool that serves everybody? People say, well, Littlefield has a pool. Well, Littlefield's a small city. You can put a pool in the middle of it and everybody can ride their bike there. You can't do that in Lubbock. We had 4 pools. And that's still, we had no pools on South Lubbock.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, oh, South Lubbock gets everything. Well, South Lubbock didn't have pools, and South Lubbock didn't get our splash pads. North and East Lubbock got our splash pads, and Central Lubbock. So everything doesn't go to South Lubbock.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can you speak on that? Because that's one thing people say, South Lubbock, it's getting all the money, all the resources, everything.
It's getting road money because that's where the roads need to be built. We don't need roads inside the loop.
Because everybody's moving.
We got roads. Well, we got roads. All our roads are built inside the loop. The only roads Lubbock needs are where people are building new houses. So that's where we have to spend the money. I mean, I'm not going to build a road to nowhere to serve no one. We're going to build roads where people are living. That's why I'm really trying to encourage people to begin moving to the west and to the north. Again, I want to keep downtown of Lubbock more central, and I kind of feel like we've gone as far south as we can, and I don't want downtown to become abandoned. That's always bad and negative in a city when you have a dying or an abandoned downtown. I don't want to see that happen.
And so what about East Lubbock development?
East Lubbock development, the key to East Lubbock development is going to be more housetops, because you're not going to get businesses there until you have more people to shop in those businesses. I think Leprino's a good opportunity because it's outside the loop on the east side of Lubbock. They're going to hire 700-800 people at good jobs, $55,000, $60,000 a year.
Nice.
And so, that's an opportunity for people to move into that neighborhood, to build houses. And so that's going to be a slow driver, but you can't just, that's a private thing. People are going to put a business where they think their business will succeed. That's not, the city can't say, oh, you want to have a business? I'll approve your business if you'll put it here. And we don't have that power or that right, because we're not giving them anything. We're just approving their plan to build a business. And so we have to encourage the situation where people want to build businesses, and when the businesses go, the houses will be built, the people will move in there.
So like tax breaks or something if they build on the east side?
Lita can, and again, Leprino got some tax breaks. That's where they wanted to be, though. Yeah. And that was really kind of their location. And unfortunately, even some people in that neighborhood complained about Leprino. And I'm going, well, you can't complain about every business. There are businesses there they do complain about that probably they have some legitimate complaints about. But, if you want to have a successful east side, you're going to have businesses there. And the city, I think, stands ready to do whatever we can to encourage people to put a business over there. But the key is people living there.
Yeah.
And, of course, the key to that is your school system, too.
Yeah.
Having a good school, that's where people want to be.
Well, I know, because I was born and raised in East Lubbock. And so I grew up over there back when we had the extreme gang violence and all that. And I've seen the change. Like, it's changed a little bit for the better. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the police presence now is good. Back then, you couldn't even get them over there.
Yes.
So, if you create the opportunities, you give them the jobs, you know what I'm saying? You're going to cut down on the crime. You're going to cut down on
the neighborhood's safe, and there's there are jobs. It'll grow.
Yeah, definitely.
It will grow. And so that's what we try to do is those are the two things we can do. Try to keep it safe.
Yeah.
And where we can give incentives for people to locate there. Yeah. But we're also in the process, people complained in East Lubbock. We had some unpaved streets. So we've been over the past few years in the process of any street that actually had a house on it that was unpaved, we paved or are paving. And if there was no house on it, we didn't do that. Again, that didn't make any sense. But if someone had a house someplace on that street and it was unpaved, we paved it.
Yeah, because I think that's just the one thing that a lot of people feel is like that Lubbock's continuing to grow, but it's growing away and people are being left behind, East, North Lubbock,
Yeah, and I understand that. Probably the greatest natural asset the city of Lubbock has, though, is our canyon and our canyon lakes, which runs right through North and East Lubbock. Mm-hmm. And so our long-range plan in our parks department is to make that canyon and that lake system into one long, continuous, well-landscaped park. And Lake 7, I talked about right when we got started. If you drive out 50th Street east towards Buffalo Springs, outside the loop, you drop down into the little canyon there, and you come up. And if you look off to your right as you're driving out there, you can see what used to be Rimrock City. If people have lived here old enough, they know what Rimrock City was. Well, that will be the upper end, the tail end of Lake 7. The dam will be right where the road crosses at the end of Buffalo Springs Lake. So right above Buffalo Springs Lake will be this other lake that is going to be 2.5 times the size of Buffalo Springs and Ransom Canyon Lake combined. So it'll be a huge lake that will supply about a third of our water, and it'll be a recreational lake that people can really enjoy. Right here, you don't have to go to Possum Kingdom or anyone else. You'll have a wonderful lake right here in Lubbock. And that will be that end of our park system with trails, all along. And so that's our goal. We have a master plan for that. It's a long-term project, but I'm very committed to it. And part of what we're trying to do is get rid of the prairie dogs.
Do you have that lady who goes and picks them up and relocates them?
She didn't. That was a problem.
Prairie dog time.
But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, she didn't relocate them.
Oh, okay.
She just took them to South Lubbock and let them go.
Oh.
And then you can see they're just everywhere now.
Yeah.
So that was an unfortunate thing right there.
So in the my bad.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the downtown development, we're going to get a comedy club, right?
He's a comedian.
Well, hey, if someone wants, okay, what would it take for a comedy club to succeed in downtown?
People.
Okay.
People have to be down there. They have to want to be there. Yes, they can want to be there for the comedy club, but usually for that club to succeed, people have got to be there for other reasons too.
Yeah.
A place to eat. Some other activity to meet their friends before they go to the club or to eat or to get drinks or whatever, There has to be enough of an attraction there, what you want to call a critical mass or whatever, that businesses will succeed because you have to have people there. If you build it, they will not necessarily come, Yeah. And there has to be enough reasons for them to go there. And that's one thing I'm working on, is to try to develop downtown. It's been a goal of mine since I got into office. It continues to be a goal of mine. And I've talked about it. We do have a plan. Actually, we've had 4 plans, I think, going back I don't know how many years, to remodel or refurbish our Civic Center and add on a new, larger exhibition hall. Our exhibition hall is 40,000 square feet. We miss out on a lot of trade shows and conventions because most of them require 80 to 100,000. So we don't get them. We lose them. And that's really important. You bring in businesses to Lubbock for trade shows and conventions, and sooner or later some of those businesses are going to go, let's locate an office here. Let's do some business here in Lubbock. This is a good city. So that's an important thing. Our Civic Center was built after the tornado, and so it's 50 years old.
The anniversary's today?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday.
Yeah. And so, I want to see that happen, but at the same time, we have a process or a program to try to build a expo center out on North University. And so a lot of people have been working on that since the voters voted to approve that back in 2016. We approved a 2-cent, it was a county vote, not a city vote, but the county voted, which included, of course, 90% of the people were city people voting in that election, but they voted to add 2 cents to the hotel tax. When you stay in a hotel and your bill is $100, there's usually a bunch of other charges on top of it. They're taxes of different kinds. One of them would be this hotel tax. And so you could raise that hotel tax 2 cents on the dollar. The county raised that. And that money can be used to build what they're calling the Expo Center, which is an arena and adjacent facilities, mostly ag-related type facilities. So they have a plan to build that out on North University. But they've had a hard time raising the money for that project. And the project has gotten bigger, it's gotten more expensive, and they've not really moved very far along with their money. The county can bond about $40 million off of the money they get. they're not going to provide all 40 because they got to hold some back for maintenance and running the thing. So maybe they got 30 million. I think this private group says they've got 25. Well, that gets you to about 55. I think the county has maybe 9 or 10 in the bank. That gets you to 65 million. But the cost for what they were planning was about 92 million. So they're still short quite a lot from what they want to do. So now they're starting to scale the design back and scale the arena back. And that concerns me, that scaling back idea. I've been concerned that they haven't raised the money. In fact, one large foundation that was going to give them millions of dollars decided not to. But they said, if you take this arena and you put it downtown with your civic center, we'll give you that money. That money will be there again.
Oh, so it's basically just because of location? Maybe?
Yes. They believe it will be much more successful, better for Lubbock if it's downtown than if it's out on North University. So I got into it first to just figure out, how can I help get progress on this project that the voters voted for and wanted. We've been 6 years now. We tore down the Coliseum. We got nothing to replace it. And what can we do? And I thought this is one way to get that off a ground center or high center and get it moving forward again. Get more private. I think more private money will come into it. It will bring in more visitors, more business, more acts, entertainment, not just a rodeo. That's pretty much ag related out there. Yeah. I want a multi-purpose arena that's sports oriented, concert oriented, rodeo oriented,
Monster
all
trucks.
of that. Yeah, well, maybe. That's not a big one. I know people love them, but again, you have to build a certain facility to handle it. And again, you got to think about the cost of it. What really pays the bread and butter on it? And that's going to be concerts, sporting events, and rodeos. And so I want an arena that will do that. So my proposal was to bring that downtown, put it together with our expanded convention center. It's right across the street from Buddy Holly Hall.
Sweet venue.
We've got the Arts District right to the east of it. Mm-hmm. Then
our comedy club
yes,
will go there.
Your comedy club, your restaurants, your bars, your hotels.
Colbert's.
People will spend private money and develop around that. You'll even see housing go in downtown. I've seen this project over in some other cities where they did this. And right across the street from it, they have what I would call more like a brownstone, a 2 or 3 story housing, where
that'd be fun to
each
live
house is about 2 or 3 stories tall. They were going for $1 million each. Now, I don't know if that'd be the market in Lubbock, but you would get people say, I want to live down here where the excitement is. And so I'm thinking, and if we do that, and that's again a driver for sales tax. It's a driver for developing private property with hotels, restaurants, comedy clubs, bars, et cetera, that are paying property taxes that relieves the burden on our citizens. Because that money, the money for that project will all be coming from the hotel tax that people who stay in hotels pay. It will not come from the taxpayer's pocket. It will come from a taxpayer's pocket, but not a Lubbock taxpayer's pocket. Yeah. Well, not the Lubbock. It's someone who comes into Lubbock for a concert or for a trade show or something like that. They're paying that fee, and private money is what will build it. And so the hot tax allows us to bond, another $40 million, just like the county could bond, get $20 million or more from some foundations. We get other private development. I mean, I just think that's a better way to go. There's that conversation's going on back and forth. But at the end of the day, the arena is not a city project. It's a county project, and the county's going to have to make a decision about it.
So how do we get these movie theaters and all that to come and start filming movies in Lubbock instead of Amarillo?
Well, that's a good question.
Is that happening?
We are, Lubbock just this week got the recognition as we have it's not a trifecta, it's a fourfecta. I don't know what that is, quadfecta. We are the music-friendly, film-friendly, tourism-friendly, and digital media-friendly city. We're the only city, we're one of only 2 cities in the state of Texas that have all 4 of those designations. And so, we're well equipped. We got great people at city and a lot of professionals here in Lubbock that stand ready to help anybody coming in any of those areas to help them. So part of it is just making them aware. We have some, but we could do a whole lot more. Yeah. Amarillo is close to Palador. It's got some landscape, advantages we don't have down here. But we're working on it. I'll just tell you, we're working on it.
I need to be in more movies.
Yeah. I mean, the folks.
You wouldn't cast him, would you?
Yeah,
Come on.
I think he'd be great.
I've been in two.
I
I've
think.
been in two movies.
Okay, what movies have you been in?
The Independent. I was a background actor.
Okay, all right. Did you have a
Man
speaking
number
part?
one.
Did you have a
I didn't
speaking
know
part?
speaking.
No
Fat
speaking
Man
part.
number 2.
Yeah, Fat Man number 2. Yeah.
So are you pretty confident about the downtown thing, like that it's going to happen, or?
Well, I know I'm confident that the city part of it, what we are in control of, the remodeling the civic center, existing one, and adding on an expanded convention center, an exhibition hall, will happen. I hope that the arena will be located there as well.
Okay.
Now, the folks who want it out on North University, their idea is that there's not enough room in downtown Lubbock for parking or for what I would call the ancillary buildings they want to build, which are most livestock related, an equestrian center, livestock pens, all that kind of stuff that go along with rodeos. I think we have the property and the land downtown necessary to do that if and when there ever is the money to do that. But their problem now is they don't have the money to do that either. So, I mean, that shouldn't be a drawback at this point. I want the best decision for the citizens and taxpayers for their benefit, the best benefit to them. And I think downtown is what gives them the best benefit.
Heck yeah. Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you, too, if the city wants to buy land from somebody, like a private citizen, can they deny? Can they say no?
Can the private citizen say, yes, private citizen can always refuse to sell. Now, the exception to that is if the city wants to use that land for a private purpose, for a public purpose, a public purpose.
Like a park.
Yeah, or let's say, we're building a new, and we're going through that process right now. I talked about right-of-way, purchasing right-of-way. When we expand a thoroughfare from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, well, we have to buy that extra width if we haven't already owned it, if we don't already own it. But even if to own it, we had to buy it from somebody. And so that's a public purpose. And so we go and we offer that, say a homeowner owns that property. We'll get an appraisal on it. We'll say we offer you this much money for that property. The homeowner can say no. You can contest it. And you can go into a process in which you work back and forth and you try to come to an agreement on a price that the city's willing to pay and the homeowner is willing to sell it for. And if at the end of the day you can't get there, say the homeowner wants too much money and the city says, we're not paying that much, we think it's only this much, then you can condemn the property under the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment of our Constitution allows that, to pay them the true value of that land. So, no, you can't keep the city from taking your land. You take it, but you have to pay for it.
You're going to get something.
An illegal taking is when you just take it without paying them, or you take it for a purpose that's not really a public purpose.
So you can't like.
If I say that you want to build your comedy club where someone else has some other building, I can't sit there and say, well, we're going to condemn that property so that you can build your comedy club there because you want that there, and I like you, and I want your comedy club. We can't do that.
Yeah.
I wish we could.
Yeah, well, can't do it.
We had a farmer.
We have a constitution.
Good thing.
Thank God we have a constitution. Otherwise, oh gosh.
Different podcast. We had a farmer on here not too long ago. How do we help them bros out? How do we protect them and their job and make sure some corporate entity doesn't just steal all the land?
Yep.
That's more directed to your state legislature.
Oh, okay.
And because most farmers, of course, have their land outside the city.
Oh, true.
And I mean, we do have some farmland inside our city and that are farmed. And but most farmers depend on either subsidies from the government or protection, if taxes, death taxes. You own this property and you die and your heirs want to inherit it and there's taxes, those are federal and state kind of issues that most farmers face. What I would say that we are doing as a city that does indirectly help our farmers is that rather than getting our water from underground, which we still do to an extent, but Lubbock has a 100-year water plan. It's a moving target. We always move it forward 100 years. So we're very forward-looking. Lubbock is probably the best prepared city in the state of Texas for water. It's one of the things I've learned and I'm happiest about in being mayor. I feel so confident and comfortable with that. So we get water now from three main sources. One is the old one. The original one was the Bailey fields out near Monahans. That's an underground water source under the sand hills there, and that came into Lubbock, and that provided our water for a long time. Then, I forget how many years ago, we bought water rights up in Roberts County, way far north near Amarillo, and that underground water source plus Lake Meredith, that water comes into a pipeline that runs all the way down from there to Lubbock, and it services Lubbock and 10 other cities. We all share in the cost of that, and we get the rights to the water, our share of the water coming off of that. So that provides, at the moment, probably 40% of our water, and we're in the process of planning to build a second pipeline because we're going to need it. But that's about a 150-year water supply that we look at up there. Then, about 25 years ago, we built Lake Allen Henry down near Post. And so that's about a third of our water supply, I would say. And, of course, that was an expensive project. And people complain about debt. And when I point out to them how much of our debt is associated with making sure we have water, and I ask them, I said, well, would you rather not have paid that and have nothing come out of your tap when you turn it on? It's pretty easy. Some debt is not bad debt because it provides you something that's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. And so when I explain that to them, they go, well, I understand that.
Who do we owe that debt to?
We owe it to the Canadian River Water Authority took that debt, to build it, and we pay for that to build it.
For water, that's crazy.
And then Lake Allen Henry, we built it, and then we had to build, because it's down off the cap rock, so we had to build a pipeline and pump stations to lift it up the hundreds of feet onto the cap rock to get to us. And then Lake 7 will be about a third of our water source. The neat thing about Lake 7 is, and if you've been out to the lake system in Lubbock, the canyons, if you notice, the lakes are never dry. You look down in Austin and the lakes are drying up and all that, and you go, why in Lubbock we don't get as much rain as Austin? It doesn't seem like. Our lake's always full. Because, again, Lubbock is great about water. If there's rainfall like we've had, our streets are our stormwater system, a large part of our stormwater system. That water is all collected, goes into drains, and it goes into our canyons. We have a couple of different spots where it's poured into the lakes and the canyon. That's a source of constant water for them. This is not as appetizing for people, but when you flush your toilet and that gray water goes out to our treatment plant, it gets treated, okay? It doesn't get treated to drinkable quality, but it gets treated to a decent enough quality that we can then spread that water out over fields. So the city owns a lot of property that we lease to farmers, and they use this water to irrigate their fields, and then that water trickles down through the land, down into the aquifer below, and we pump the water up out of that because after it's percolated, it has become treated. It's clean. We pump that water up and put it into our lakes.
Nice.
And then Leprino, the cheese plant that I was telling you about, they produce about 2.5 million pounds of cheese a day. The largest cheese producer in the United States. Well, what is cheese made out of?
Milk.
Question, milk. What do they take out of milk to make cheese?
I don't know that one.
Water.
Water. I'm going to clip that one.
Okay.
So
the water is removed from the product to make the cheese. They treat that water, and then that water, about 1.5 million gallons a day, gets put back into our canyons.
1.5 million.
Yes.
Dang.
And so we buy that water from them, but we buy it from them cheaper than we get water any from Canadian Water or from Lake Allen Henry. It is a cheaper source of water to us. So we have got and then on top of that, Lubbock citizens, we're in the top 3 best lowest water consumption per capita cities in Texas. The citizens of Lubbock are really good about conserving water. And so with all of that, we're not pumping out more water out of the Ogallala Aquifer than we need to, which is where our farmers get a lot of their water from. So we're helping to preserve that resource for them because we're so dadgum good about that. I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back all day long for that.
That's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
We don't think about that just, at this
Well,
level.
you got to think about that. Without water, Lubbock would not be
I don't
here.
think I'm going to leave Lubbock ever.
I'm going to stop taking 2-hour showers.
Yeah, please do.
Don't tell him that. Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
What is your favorite place to eat here?
In Lubbock? Well, I'll tell you.
Shout out to one place.
Wow, that's used to be. Man, I'll tell you a story. My wife and I and my kids, we ate at a place called La Cumbre out in Cactus Alley every Friday night. Every Friday night. It was like a religion for us. We didn't even have to order. They knew what we wanted. They just brought it to us when we went in there. And one Friday night, we all drove over to go there, and there was a sign on the door that said, "We are now closed." And you would have thought someone shot a family dog. You never saw a more unhappy group of people.
There was no warning?
No.
Oh, no.
No. And we knew the guy who owned it, and he wanted his dad to retire, and his dad wouldn't. So he just closed the business, and his dad would not stop working, and his dad died shortly thereafter. And actually, my friend died shortly thereafter, too. But so then we were on this search for where do we go on Friday nights now? And we go to Orlando's a lot. We love Orlando's. We love Thai food. We go to Bangkok Thai a lot. And we actually eat a number of Thai places in Lubbock because we really, really, really do love Thai food. And you got some good choices for Thai food. And for Mexican food, we either go to Jalisco's or to El Charro out on 50th and the interstate.
Jalisco's is pretty good.
Yeah. If you don't mind waiting in line to get in.
They don't even let you in?
Yeah, well, I don't. That's not one of those things I do.
I'll get you in.
No, well, and so, well, actually, they have the same menu at both places. El Charro's smaller and quieter, and I kind of like to go there. You don't wait in line ever, and it's just, I don't know, it's quieter. And so those are big places for us. I like Ike's Grill.
Oh, nice.
And they got great stuff. I like Chicken Express.
That's a good one.
I like fried chicken.
Did you ever try Dave's Hot Chicken?
No, where's that?
It's on 82nd in Milwaukee. We
Okay.
just got it.
All right.
It was like when I go to Dallas, I would always get it, but now we have one here. Pretty solid pick. I don't know if you like spicy food.
I love spicy food. I absolutely love spicy food.
So if you had to pick Thai or Mexican food,
oh gosh, don't make me make that
come
choice.
on, so we can clip this part.
Thai.
We probably because we eat about the same number of. We probably go about the same amount of time to one or the other. I don't think I can throw down on one side or the other.
Do you speak Spanish?
Don't ask me to, but it's embarrassing.
You got a lot of Mexicans here.
I do. I know. I took Spanish all the way through junior high and high school and college. It was my minor.
Wow.
But I have never felt comfortable speaking it around native speakers. I read it. I can listen to it and understand. But I feel self-conscious trying to talk it. I'm always afraid I'm going to, use the wrong tense or something like that,
I
or
think
say
we
the
both
wrong
do
word.
too, don't we?
It's more than me. I can't even speak and read it all.
And I'll tell you a story. I was a youth minister. It was my first thing I did. And I went to Peru once and worked with a bunch of youth ministers down there. And I was leading training for them, And so I was so reluctant to speak Spanish to them because I thought, oh, gosh, I'm going to use the wrong tense or the wrong word or something. I'm going to say something awful. And then I realized they were trying to speak English to me. And even if they didn't use the right tense, I knew exactly what they were saying. I had no trouble understanding what they were saying. So it's the same way me to them. They hear me the same way I'm hearing them. They know what I'm saying. So it kind of helped me get over that. But again, I don't use it often enough. I read it. I got books in my Bible. I've got a Spanish Bible, and I will read it. But how to just break out of my comfort
What's
zone.
our demographic? Like 30%?
More than that, I think, in
40?
Lubbock. Yeah. In our school system, it's 50%, I think, almost. But yeah, in Lubbock, it's probably 35 to 40% now. I mean, that's another great thing about Lubbock. I mean, Lubbock is a really vibrant, diverse city with a lot of things that make it up that are exciting and interesting. We're not a homogenous city where everybody's the same, and I like that. And people seem to get along with each other really well here. We don't have a lot of the friction and people aren't in each other's faces and like they are in some other cities. And I think that's a real testament to Lubbock. And
it really is a great place.
Our respect for each other. I think we do respect each other. We're friendly towards each other. We're open towards each other. We don't let our differences get in the way of having friendships, which is one thing I hate about politics as it's gotten in the world today and in the United States, is you can't be friends with someone because you don't agree with them politically. I'm going, how dumb is that? You know?
Yeah, I was hoping when having you on here, we can kind of help fix that, because we got a lot of liberal friends, and I already know they're going to have a certain view on you. But I'm like, look, we're having a great conversation. You're a cool dude.
No.
You don't
I
speak
have
Spanish,
a lot of
but you're
liberal
cool.
friends myself. I have a whole lot of liberal friends, and if they know me,
They're both great.
all right. I'm just thinking of people I know, and I generally try to have a good relationship with them. I hope they know that I'm always willing to sit down and talk to them, listen to them. If there's something we can agree on, a lot of times we agree on what we want as an outcome. We just don't agree on how we're going to get there. And but I'm always willing to have that conversation. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a very open person. I respect people, and that was one of my goals when I became mayor, was to make sure that the citizens of Lubbock knew that their council respected them and their opinions and was willing to listen to them. And we weren't a bunch of people up there who just got our minds all made up on everything and don't really care what you say. And I can't stand it when you talk down to people or act like they don't know what they're talking about or what's important to them. Or treat them not with respect. I can't deal with that. I wanted to change maybe I shouldn't say this, but I've seen that happen a few times on the council, and I didn't like it. And I decided I wanted to change that.
It's a great thing
attitude.
if we don't like our city council, we can vote them out, right?
Sure. You can vote me out if you don't like me.
If they don't like you, they can vote you out.
I got to tell you, I was surprised that my support came from all across the city, though. It really did. I won every precinct in the city except for 2, and one I tied in. And with 11 more votes, I'd have won those 2. So my support was very broad-based across the city. It wasn't all located in South Lubbock or Central Lubbock where I lived or anything like that. Yeah. It was broad-based all the way across the city.
How do you feel about podcasts and like the media landscape and for the future? I feel like more politicians, people in power should do podcasts.
Sure.
Yes, you should do this one, but other ones as well.
Sure.
Locally.
I think it's a new way of reaching people.
I believe
that needs to be taken advantage of. I think Trump proved that needed
That's
to
what I was going to say.
be done
the
in his
presidential
election.
really showed that.
And you can't go on a podcast with the agenda that I'm going to figure out how to use this podcast to my advantage. You've got to accept the podcast on the podcast terms, and just deal with it. And people can smell when you turn on the politician and you're trying to, you got a real agenda or you're trying to use somebody for an end. And so my deal is, if you don't agree with me, I'll be happy to go on your podcast and answer any questions you have. I'll treat you with respect as long as you treat me with respect. But, that's fine. I'm a big believer in the First Amendment and in the right of citizens to have their voices heard. And, so I'll never squelch anybody's opportunity to say what's on their mind or speak their opinion.
If somebody wanted to talk to you, how do they do that?
They just call my office. Yeah, they call. Tegan Bradley's my assistant, and she
shout out to her. Thank you.
Yeah, and she has my calendar, so she knows when I'm. Because I think I can't remember. I saw you or something, and you asked me, or you said, "Would the mayor come on?" or something.
I actually contacted you on Facebook.
Is that how it was?
Yeah, it was
on social media.
And I said yes, and I told you to call Tegan, and she could set you up, and she did.
She did. It was that easy, people.
It was that easy, and because she has my calendar, and she knows when I've got an opening.
Like I said, he just pulled up by himself to the house.
Yeah,
no security.
Well, the mayor is not important to most people, but I will tell you one of the fun things about being the mayor is when you go to talk to little elementary school kids, like second graders, third graders, fourth graders. In their mind, there is the President of the United States, And then there's the mayor.
Well, you should have saw me. That was me earlier.
There's the mayor, and that he's right below the president.
That's how I was earlier.
And someone sent me they had a question on a test in one of their classes, and they said, "Who is the governor of Texas?" And the choices were Mark McBrayer, Greg Abbott, Donald Trump. And kids obviously knew Trump was president, not governor, but I got as many votes as Greg Abbott.
It feels like that when you're talking to him. Like it really felt like that. I was like, oh gosh.
Well, kids, and I asked, I said, why is that? Why is that? And my daughter-in-law said, well, I think it's because, and she's an elementary school teacher, all the little books they read, when something's going on, oftentimes the mayor is a character in the book. They go to the mayor to get something done. And so they know the mayor is an important character. And in a sense, the mayor, city council probably affects people's lives more than almost anything else.
COVID showed us that.
Yes.
The importance of a mayor.
Yes.
And that's what I was like, yeah, that's a really important position.
Yes, it is for making good decisions or bad decisions.
I have to ask. Go ahead, because this is completely have you talked personally with Trump?
No, I've never talked personally with him. I went up to the inauguration. Of course,
Nice.
I had nice seats. But of course, it was all sent indoors, and of course, I wasn't important enough to get invited into the Capitol. So they were going to have the rally in a center up there, and that
was at the hockey arena, right?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, and of course, you had to wait in line for that. Just because you had a good seat for the inauguration, it was first come first serve at the arena, and it was 10 degrees. Yeah. And so we just weren't going to go stand. We had friends who stood in line for 7.5 hours and still didn't get in.
Yeah, I would have.
And I'm like, I wouldn't. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll watch it on TV. We were in a congressional office building. Jody Arrington got us and a bunch of Lubbock people up there, a place to have available there. And we watched it on TV. We watched the inauguration. It was really cool. I mean, people who know me know I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a conservative. So yeah, it was. I think people can complain about Trump all they want. There's no perfect president out there.
Well, they complain about you, and you're a great guy.
Well, people just like to complain. I said, okay, if that's your goal is to complain away. If your goal is to try to get something done, come and talk to me. Maybe we can figure something out.
You know who's serious and who's not, basically, right? Like the complainers and the people who are like, let's get something done. Let's work together.
I will work with anybody that I can. I try to stay focused on what's my objective, what's my goal, and work with people to get to that end. People who know me know I'm an easygoing person. I'm patient. I try to take my ego out of stuff. But every politician has an ego, and you just got to control it. Yeah, I sometimes wish Trump would control his a little bit more.
Don't we all?
But again, going back to the fact, he's a builder. And I think that's what we need in our country right now. Someone who has that vision and that understanding.
And what you've been saying, it's like, it comes down to money.
It does.
We got to make money.
You're going to take it out of the taxpayers' money, or you're going to get private individuals excited about what you're doing and willing to invest in it. Mm-hmm. And that's the much better way to try to go about it. So,
you got anything else for them?
Well, just the same thing, man.
Your
I was
Majesty,
nervous,
Mr. Mayor.
I was nervous, about you coming in here. I was thinking he was gonna ask for an autograph. I was like, come on, I don't want to sign.
Yeah, can I have your autograph? Can I have your autograph?
I knew it was gonna happen.
Come on, man.
I knew it was gonna happen. I was like, that's it.
When I go into something called the snake pit, you got to think I'm probably more intimidated by that than you guys were. I mean, I'm like, gosh,
think that we actually have snakes.
Pit? And then I saw he called me out that, the reason I did this podcast because I wanted something. Mm-hmm. I wanted that invite to those, press boxes.
I was going to ask him after the podcast. So,
Well, one of the things about being a mayor, you cannot accept gifts that aren't available and given to anybody else.
So you got to pay for tickets.
You got to pay. I have tickets to all my games and
you
all that.
Pay for
now, sometimes I get invited to sit in a box or something like that, but I've already bought a ticket to the game. And so I don't. I'm very conscious about that. I try as much as possible. I don't want people to see. Perception is everything. I don't want people to say, "Oh, he's in that job for what he can get out of it." Like I said, I'm not running for another office. I'm not trying to get more business. I'm in it. They can believe me or not. I'm in it for the citizens and the taxpayers. The only reason I got in it, and that's the reason. as I can continue to stay in this position, if the voters want me there, that's what I'll be there for. So,
Well, I believe you.
thank you.
I genuinely feel it too.
Thank you.
I usually ask people to plug anything, but I don't know if you want to plug any your website. They can contact you, or Facebook. Just search his name. That's how I did it.
Yeah, well, one of the things is I tried to have a website where I could communicate by Facebook as the mayor the things that are going on in the city. But we've had the dangest time with Facebook allowing us to do that. They won't approve it. So I've got my campaign website, which I still post some things on. It's McBrayerforLubbock.com, I guess. And that's, was going to be more political stuff, whereas the city, my mayor's city, was going to be non-political, just what's going on in town, what are we working on, what's happening. So I've had to kind of put some of that over there, but we did get a Instagram, and I think that's LBK Mayor. I think it's what it is. So you'll see stuff there, I believe, if you're on Instagram. I am the most technologically behind person in the
crazy,
world.
He responded to me on Facebook when you're saying this.
And Facebook. Lubbock LBK Mayor. So that's it.
We'll
So
tag him.
we try to keep some things going on there. It's kind of short things, not long form stuff on LBK Mayor, but
You should do a 30-minute weekly podcast to talk about the things going on in Lubbock.
If people really want to hear from me that much, I don't know.
That's why I said 30 minutes a week.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, I can talk to Tegan about that. Tegan is really interested in trying to get me more accessible to the public. And so I probably just need to turn her loose on that and say, tell me what to do and when to do it. So.
Well, yeah, we get to know more know who you are, your vibe, everything.
Well, you can invite me back anytime you want. So
It's a cool thing.
We'll have him on again then very soon, I guess. No, we'll figure out.
I'm not going to be your weekly podcast. So
No, but
how often is your podcast?
I can record 2-3 a week and just I drop them whenever
you want. Okay.
Yeah. This
Whenever
one
you
will
got
come out like tomorrow.
Okay.
I wanted to keep it a secret, but I couldn't. I was like, no, I'm going to do it with the mayor. Like I'm telling you, it really was Trump you for me this whole week. I was like,
Well, I'm easier to get than Trump, I'm sure,
Yeah.
But if Trump comes to town and I have a sit down with him, I'll say, hey, there's a podcast, because I think he likes to do podcasts.
I might melt if you did that.
He would go crazy.
Well, again, I thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you,
we'll
guys.
definitely have you back on.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a good day in Lubbock, and lucky me, I live in Lubbock.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Are aliens real?